Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Fairy God Boss Live webinar in partnership with Brother USA. We are so excited to have you all, and we're so excited to share our stories and our journey with you today. And we're going to wait a few minutes and let everyone come in and get settled. And while we're doing so, we want you to take a second. There's a little chat box to the right. Let us know where you are checking in and tuning in from today. We'd like to see you all, get to know you all, and see where you're dialing in from today. And we'll get everyone in and get comfortable, and we'll get to know each other and share a little bit about Brother USA and on our journeys. So let's take a look here. All right. We're super excited. This is Brother's first opportunity to do a live event with Fairy God Boss. And so we're really excited to get to know you all and learn a little bit about your journey as well. Okay. See a few people trickling in. Okay. We'll give everyone maybe about 1 or 2 minutes. We want to respect everyone's lunchtime. Okay. Okay, we have Florida, Indianapolis, Bridgewater. We're hoping that some of our brother employees are joining us. We have a few locations, Bridgewater and Tennessee, Colorado. I see we have some folks from Wisconsin, Canada. Wow, we actually have some of our Canada subsidiaries, our folks from Brother Canada here with us this week. So shout out to all of you. CXC is in the house. They are supporting Melissa today. Awesome. And Pennsylvania, Utah. You guys are from all over. This is amazing. Michigan. And we also have Casey. Casey's on our team. So Casey Goldstein, you'll see him in the chat. And so he's going to be dropping some links for us and making sure that you guys are connected. If you want to learn more about Brother, if you want to check out our career page, or if you want to learn about our culture, he'll be dropping some links in the chat for us today as well. So welcome everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started, but before we do, you guys obviously know where the chat is. So if you have questions, you want to chime in, or you want to leave some comments, please feel free to do so. This session will be recorded, and everyone who actually registered for the event today will get the recording afterwards. So no worries if you want to go back, because I assure you, Melissa and Madison will be dropping nuggets today. So if you want to go back and rewatch, you'll be able to do so. There's also a Q&A feature. If you want to use that anonymously and you don't want to ask questions in the chat, you can do so with the Q&A feature. We have someone monitoring those as well. And for those of you who may not know, Fairy God Boss is the largest online career community for women. So millions of women come to Fairy God Boss for career insights, for job opportunities, for community advice, information about how companies treat women and the benefits that they have, and then also just for learning opportunities like these. So we're super excited to have you all with us. And I know personally that you guys will get some incredibly valuable information from today's session. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, my name is Lena Cohen-Hawkins, and I'm the director for DEI and culture. And then I also oversee our internal communications. And so primarily it's my job to make sure that people feel valued, respected, and appreciated here at Brother. And so we enjoy making sure that from a policy standpoint, we're doing what we're supposed to do, but also from a culture and engagement standpoint, that people just love working here and that they enjoy coming here and that they have the benefits that they need to make sure they have mental health, and also that they have a good time here and that they feel good about working here. And then also on the communication side, we want to make sure that we're connecting, engaging, and informing our employees appropriately. We want them to feel connected to the organization and make sure that they feel like they belong and have the information they need. And then from a personal standpoint, I love to travel. My husband and I been to 16 countries. I really love to dive into art, fashion, history, and learn more about various cultures. And I have a 4-year-old French bulldog named Paris that I adore. She's my bestie. So that's just a little bit about me. Again, I'm super excited to be your host and your facilitator today. And I'd like to have Melissa and Madison also introduce themselves before we dive into the conversation today. So, Melissa, please join us.
Thank you, Lena. Happy to join you and everyone here today. My name is Melissa McLain. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing Operations here at Brother. That title itself is quite a mouthful. So, what I do in marketing operations is my team really promotes the culture and the capabilities that propels marketing effectiveness. So, we provide governance, process, financials, performance, making sure we can solidify the role and value of marketing. We make sure we have benchmarks to provide visibility. We can be objective. We make sure that we can find scalable, repeatable processes across all of Brothers business units that we serve. I am a champion of a goal oriented strategic plan. We need to root that with a hypothesis, go to market, and then evaluate how successful those activities are. Ultimately, I kind of am checks and balances to the marketing team, the performance teams here at Brother. Recently, I was honored to be named Brother's 2025 Leader of the Year, which meant so much to me because it highlights the work and impact so near and dear to my heart. Leading with vision, boldness, making mentorship a daily priority, supporting rising leaders across the organization, and being relentlessly focused on team growth and impact. Outside of work, I have two daughters, so my hobbies are shuffling them around, driving them from place to place, and managing their schedules. Hopefully, in a few years, I can have some space to have hobbies again, Lena. Maybe I'll start traveling without them. But between my kids and my job, that kind of gives me a very full plate.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I remember those days as well. Madison, would you join us and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Madison Guyon, and I am the Brand Protection Manager here at Brother. The term brand protection may be new to some of you. Basically, my role is to oversee our strategy to protect our brand. So that's everything from monitoring and enforcement on e-commerce platforms such as Amazon and Walmart, as well as offline activities, working alongside law enforcement. Our job is to protect our intellectual property rights, both online and offline. I have been at Brother for close to 6 years now, and I've worn several different hats. Started my career off in sales, made my way over to marketing, actually on Melissa's team for a couple of years, which was wonderful. And now I have found my way onto the legal team, working as the brand protection manager. So I'm super excited to talk with you all today about my career journey and hopefully provide some helpful and tangible career mobility insights. So super excited. And then personally, I am recently married this past December. So, I enjoy spending time with my husband. We live in Philadelphia, and I have a 5-year-old dog named Denny that we spend a lot of time with and, take to the park. And so that's really what's taking up my life these days. And then hobby-wise, I really enjoy reading and as just like Lena, also enjoy travel.
Thank you, Madison. Well, we are going to dive into the conversation of talent mobility and really how to shift internally for your career aspirations. But before we do that, I would like to give a big congratulations to both Melissa and Madison, because when we decided that we were going to take on this opportunity, we did not know that Melissa and Madison would be ABOTA winners. And that is our Board of Directors Awards that we do every year. It's one of the highest awards that you can get. And so I just want to congratulate both of them for their win this year. So we're going to deep dive into our first question, which is, here at Brother, we are somewhat of a smaller organization. So we really do like to promote, mobility from the inside. From your opinion, what do you guys think is the benefit for both employees and the company when people make internal shifts within the company?
Lena, I love that you frame this that both company and employee, because it is a two-way street, that there are benefits both that the employee can bring and the company can gain when there is internal career shifts. So I'll start with the company. First and foremost, it's diversity of thought. So it moves us away from groupthink or like minded thinking, or it's always been done this way. So diversity of thought is bringing varied perspectives, varied backgrounds, being the voice in the room that might think a little differently. Also, when we do have internal career shifts, the company can retain that institutional knowledge. Madison mentioned she was on my team at one point. We still go to her years later to say, remember this process you created, or remember this thing you did? Remind us how that happened. So we're able to keep that knowledge within Brother, even though she's on another team today. So the retention of that tacit knowledge within the organization is extremely valuable. Also, we're able to develop a pipeline of leaders. These are people that have understood the culture of our organization, have again understand what makes us successful, what are our culture drivers, how does Brother like to support our employees. So being able to kind of have this pipeline of employees that are ready for leadership roles is so valuable to the organization. For the employee, talent mobility and making internal career shifts, it can help someone develop new skills. So, at Brother, we are always on a continual learning journey. So, being able to develop those new skills, hone skills that maybe weren't in practice before, or see and now kind of have the opportunity to see new skills in practice is also really helpful. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and seeing others exhibit this skill is something that's so incredibly beneficial. There also is the opportunity to have a broader understanding of the organization. You may understand what the department that you work in does, but as you shift throughout the organization, you kind of can see holistically. It puts into practice things you may have heard, things you may have seen, but truly now you understand it. You're kind of in it and living it. And lastly, and I think this is probably the one that y'all thought I was going to say first, it's career progression. Sheryl Sandberg said it once that your career is not necessarily a ladder; it's a jungle gym that you can move across versus focusing just vertically. So the fact that talent shift and internal career shifts can lead to career progression is extremely beneficial.
Thank you, Melissa. Madison, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, just something to add to Melissa's comment. I think in terms of benefits to the individual, I would just say to add to that, it's such a unique opportunity to build upon like those transferable skills. So I know like skills that I learned while working in sales development, right? There's so many things I learned there that I still use today. And I think that's just such an important piece of this and something that's really unique to that internal career shifts.
Thanks so much. We do have a question, and I'd like to just go ahead and dive in. Someone put this in the Q&A, which is probably right along with what we're talking about. But, oftentimes we think of climbing a ladder, right? Or going straight up when we think about talent mobility. Could you share the story of what was the moment that you realized the internal shift was the right move to you? Maybe not directly up, but maybe over, maybe in a different department, maybe in a different division, maybe at a different level. And how did you know that it was the right time?
So I can jump in here. About 2 or so years ago, I was on the marketing team here at Brother, but a significant portion of my job was actually in brand protection work. At the time, there was no dedicated brand protection team or role, so it was kind of just me running that and building that program. It was a part of my job that I really did enjoy. And I will say that because I enjoyed it, because I was so interested in learning about it and studying it, I became pretty good at it, and I built confidence in myself in that space. So, Brother ultimately decided that they needed to invest in brand protection and acquire some additional headcount, because of the importance of brand protection. In today's day and age, with e-commerce and marketplace platforms booming. So, my first thought was, with this role is like, I don't know if I'm really qualified for this. This role was under the legal team. I figured that they would want someone with legal background. So I'll be honest, I initially kind of shied away from applying at first. And it really wasn't until I was talking to a colleague of mine and kind of put it in my ear and said, Madison, why aren't you considering this role? It's perfect for you. And from that moment on, I had a complete kind of mind shift and realized that it's so important to remain open-minded. Even if you're really comfortable in a role and you're good at it, there are opportunities out there, and you have to really pinpoint what are you good at and really expand on that and consider the possibilities that are out there. So in that moment, I realized, I am good at this, and I do really, really enjoy it. It's a part of my job that I really enjoy. Let me try to go after it. And I'm ultimately just super glad I didn't let that fear and doubt get in my way, and I made the right decision for myself.
I love that you said that you were open minded, because sometimes you may not always know what that next step looks like, right? And so being open minded and being open to the possibility of something new allowed you to take the step to go to the next level, even if it was a little intimidating or you had a little bit of nerves to say, well, I'm not in legal. I don't, I don't belong in legal, but having an open mind, because I think sometimes we have this one track mind of what our career looks like, and then we could possibly miss out on other opportunities. So I think that your ability to remain open minded obviously helped you there. But I just wanted to reiterate that. Melissa, what about yourself? How did you know when it was time, or that, hey, maybe this trajectory of just going up, maybe there's an opportunity on the side? How did that work out for you?
So, I love the example of Madison Guyon because it was a position that she was really closely going to work with. So, in her example, and I've had career shifts like that, where I knew as a stakeholder that was going to work with this position, that I knew the support that that position needed to provide to me. And then when I was able to clearly understand what good looks like in that job from a shared service or stakeholder perspective, I realized, wait, I can do a lot of those things, or I have the skills that can flex and grow into those. So I've had experience where I have made moves because I worked really closely with that role and saw what good looked like. And I've also had roles where I did not work really closely, but I knew it was time based upon the skills I had and where I was in my mastery journey of those skills. So I knew, for example, and I've spent my career kind of in sales or marketing roles. And there have been times where I've said, I may have mastered this particular skill, but look, it is now transferable to this other position. So even though I may not have an innate knowledge of what good looks like, I know it's time because I personally cannot master this skill that's really important to me anymore in this current role. So for me, for example, one of the skills that I like to hone in on is storytelling. And I think that storytelling is so incredibly important, regardless of what role you're in. And sometimes there have been a role where it's like, I can't master this anymore. I've done all the decks, I've pitched everything I can, I've collected all the data and created stories around them. So I need to go find a new stage where I can focus on storytelling. So for me, it's been an example of kind of mastery of skills, transferability of skills, and that really comes down to when I felt like it was time to make a move.
Thank you so much, Melissa. You mentioned something about transferable skills, and I am looking in the chat again, and we do have another question, and I think um, touching on transfer of skills will help this person. And so it says, I do DEI and HR work. And given what's happening in this country, I'm thinking about shifting. What approach would you take to figure out what's next? I would like to stay with my company. So I will take this question, of course. Um, Not only what are your transferable skills, as Melissa was saying, but I would say be curious. Being curious is such a underrated talent. In DEI, most times you have the capacity to touch so many elements of the business. I work with TA in learning how we can get the brother brand out there in new communities like Fairy God Boss, right? I also want to help them diversify their pipeline. I work with benefits and total rewards and comp, making sure that all of our employees are aware of the resources that we have and working with them to make sure we're looking at the data to make sure that it's equitable around pay, around, from state to state, from level to level, from job to job, making sure that everything lines up. I work with our L&D team to make sure that we have adequate resources for people to learn in different ways, a variety of opportunities to learn. And so there's a lot of ways that DEI touches the business, from policy to L&D to talent to, just almost ethics and compliance, communications. And so I think when you keep a spirit of curiosity, you will be able to discern, hey, is there any other areas that I am connected to, that I'm passionate about, that I can transfer my skills to? And then, we'll talk a little bit about networking later and figure out how you can begin to expose yourself to those other areas. So I would say remain curious for sure. But I think one of the other most important things, and Melissa and Madison, you can jump in here too, is I think oftentimes when people want to, or they decide, hey, I've learned everything that I can learn, or I'm ready to make a shift, they think that, oh, I'll just apply for the job. And Casey, our director for talent, mobility, and acquisition, we always say there are so many steps before just applying for the job. So once you all decided, hey, I want to take that next step, I want to make an internal move, what were some of the things that you all did to discern your readiness when it came to your skill sets? How did you identify the areas that you needed to grow in to meet the needs of those new roles? Madison, I know you talked a lot about, hey, do I know if I'm ready to shift over to the legal team? So can you talk to us a little bit about how you all got ready for that next step?
Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, I think my biggest thing I would like to share is the fact that you don't need to know everything going into an unfamiliar space or a position that you may not feel 100% confident in. You don't need to know everything going into it. I would just say the first step really is take inventory of, your current responsibilities. What in particular about your current role excites and motivates you? And really try to just use that, I guess, as a baseline to evaluate, which skills in particular interest you and what makes you confident. And once you have that, assess where maybe there are some skill gaps in the area that you're looking to get into, and really understand the requirements of that role. What do you need to build on to align with that in order to be successful? And once you've identified those gaps, begin talking to your peers that are on those teams, and understand, what are their day-to-day responsibilities? What are the skills that they recommend that you really start honing in on? And then really focus on that. There are so many resources out there and so many people out there that will want to help you if you just ask for it. And I think, asking for assistance or even just a mentorship opportunity is a great way to kind of learn that. And also see if there is an opportunity for doing some cross collaboration, some cross collaboration projects to not only get a better understanding of the skill set needed in that role, but also to showcase your current skill set.
Madison, I love what you're saying. Brother has a wonderful framework about career discussions, about career development, because careers do evolve in so many ways. So, Brother's framework is very much aligned to everything you're saying. The three pillars of this is know yourself. So, what kind of work do you like to do? What kind of work drains you? What are your key strengths? What's most important to you professionally and personally? Is it autonomy? Is it flexibility? Is it title? Is it pay? Is it doing, meaningful work? Is it that you want to have purpose? Also, as you're looking into kind of taking that inventory, as you mentioned, what are others saying? So, what feedback are you hearing, whether informally or in performance reviews? What are you hearing about what you need to develop? And also, how would others describe you? The second pillar of development is just to know your options. So, where do you see yourself in 1 to 3 years? Do personal and professional ambitions align together? Are you seeking something new and challenging, or are you looking for more of the same? Both are great options. And then taking yourself, know your options, and then planning and acting. So everything you've mentioned is part of a really strong kind of three-part framework to ensure that those practical steps are prepared to align the skill sets, to making sure that areas for growth are aligned with potential opportunities.
Thanks, Melissa. I mean, that's something that I think we all have to do at some point, right? Is maybe take a step back and look at ourselves in the mirror to say, like, hey, what do I need? How does this align? What is it that I really want? Because sometimes I think we chase titles or money, but we're not chasing the fulfillment of what is aligned with who I am, with what I want, and what I really want to do. So I love that point you made, and it kind of goes into a little bit about what Madison said earlier about mindset. So, what are some of the things that you all did to kind of get yourself mentally prepared to be able to step into roles that maybe you were unfamiliar with? Because it can be scary, right? Brother is a small organization, but we have a lot of different departments, and those departments are very different from working with printers or sewing machines or our P-Touch or our gear motors or our industrial printers. They're very, very different. So when you think about having the courage to step into something new, that can be challenging for people to think like, how do I get myself mentally and maybe emotionally prepared to step into unfamiliar territory?
So I'll take this one. And I think first and foremost, Lena, focusing on progress, not perfection. I've been at Brother for 13 years. I am not perfect in the role I've had, nor every other role, but I have made meaningful progress. I have been able to provide meaningful impact to the organization. So I think it's focusing on progress and continued learning, continued support versus saying, you know what, I have to meet 100% of the skill set before I'm ready to take something on. So having that mindset has been so helpful for me. I think also knowing my strengths and knowing how I can flex those. So that is, as Madison talked about, taking the inventory of what I like to do and how to parlay those into the things that I'm really good at. Everyone has unique and varied skill set, and it's time to, give yourself a pat on the back and figure out how can you then, help you settle into something unfamiliar by kind of buoying yourself up. And then I think lastly, it's understanding what makes you unique. So again, as I mentioned, everyone has different skills and being able to say, I may not have, one or two of the things that maybe someone is looking for, but I'm also really over indexed in this area. Or I have this other thing that you don't even know you need, but based on my past history, I can parlay that. I can bring that in. I can provide this. You're not even thinking of it yet.
Just to add to that, thanks, Melissa. I think the other thing that I would say is in terms of just different, mind shifts that I've had throughout my career, is really getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I think that's kind of where we grow the most is when we're put into situations that really challenge us and that scare us. So, I've had it's still relatively new to my in my career, and I will say I'm still saying yes to every opportunity that comes my way. Every speaking engagement, opportunity for collaboration, networking opportunities, anything. As long as I still have the bandwidth, I'm taking those on because I find that that's the way that I grow the most. And I there's only so much you can learn just by doing. You sometimes kind of have to be thrown into with the wolves, as they say.
Yeah, you mentioned networking. You guys both talked about support and, reaching out. And even as I was thinking about those transferable skills and being curious and reaching out to other departments, we touched a little bit on network, but can we dive into how do we really develop our network, grow it? And Madison, you talked a little bit about getting a mentor, which I think can be nerve wracking for people to kind of ask someone to be their mentor. Or it's like, how do I get it started? How do I know who to go to be a good mentor? Or how do I even build a network within my company? So can we dive into that a little bit and just talk to our audience about how they can do it in an authentic way that will allow them to build that skill set and community at their job.
Yeah, although we've talked about, mentorship, and traditionally, we think of that as someone that's a little more tenured in their career, someone maybe that has been here before. I like to think of my internal network both broad and deep. It's a two-way street, it's give and take. So while I am able to mentor others and be mentored myself, I also have a strong team of peers. I provide authentic, transparent feedback to them. So I also can receive that authentic, transparent feedback. They're willing to kind of call me out on things, and I do the same with them. So if you are looking for, to build your internal network, what skills, knowledge, time do you have to dedicate to others? So that way you can understand what good looks like as you are building your network. So it's kind of one of those, we rise by lifting others approach. And I think the other thing is, as Madison mentioned, she's saying yes to every opportunity. bandwidth permitting, I think it's also the same. Keep your eyes and ears open. Where can you provide valuable feedback? When you're in a room, when you're at the water cooler, when you're walking throughout the floor plan. I think that is one of the most incredible pieces. Is if you want an authentic network, be authentic in all your interactions throughout the organization.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I think, building those strong relationships is one of the most important things that you can do to really grow in your career. And I think it's so important to not only have those relationships within your immediate team, but also to develop those relationships outside of your department. Luckily at Brother, I do have a lot of opportunities to work across multiple different teams. I've been on shared services teams for majority of my career here at Brother, and I feel really fortunate for that because I get to develop and work alongside so many different people. But I also understand that's not the case for everyone, and I think it sometimes can be really difficult to kind of get your name out there when you're just working within your own team in your little bubble. So I think it's really, really important to make that more strategic, and to have those more strategic internal career shifts is to get people to know your name and your work and your reputation. And I think one of a really good way to do that, and just to meet people in general, is through something called informational interviews. I actually learned that from Casey Goldstein, who was another prior manager of mine. He has a lot of great tips and tricks on that. But I found those to be so incredibly helpful, just to schedule 30 minutes with someone that maybe you've never met before, just to talk through their roles, what their team looks like, what skills maybe would be required to work on their team eventually. Get an idea of what are you interested in. Maybe you think that you're interested in one thing and then you talk to someone and you're like, oh, maybe that's not for me. But it's a wonderful way to meet people within the organization and maybe, talk through, having some mentorship opportunities with these people. And then, I think from those types of interactions and relationships, another great way to meet people is to see if there's any sort of working group that you could get involved in. I was lucky enough to make some connections and was able to participate in a marketing working group while I was in a sales role. And that kind of got me to get some hands-on learning within marketing and also meet people within that space to eventually make that career shift.
Madison, I love what you just said about reaching out to colleagues in other areas and asking if you can grab coffee or have a brief chat about their work. I mean, I can speak for me, but most people at Brother generally love talking about what we do. And these conversations can serve multiple purposes. You're getting genuine insight into whether, a role could be a good fit. You start building relationships outside your current team, like, building your network, but you're also demonstrating curiosity and initiative that people remember. And as Lena, talked about earlier, curiosity is such a core competency. Having someone say, you know what, I'd love to talk about what you do. I'm happy to sit here, take the meeting, have the coffee. And I do remember that initiative and that curiosity that someone came with.
Thanks, Melissa. And you are actually touching on some of the topics that are in the Q&A. So I'm going to take a couple of the Q&A questions here. So the first one is, what are some effective ways to increase internal visibility without feeling like you're self-promoting? So I'll touch on this a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with self-promotion. So I'll start there. We know that sometimes, especially as women, we may not feel as comfortable with really taking ownership of our accomplishments, and it may come off as bragging. But as Melissa and Madison, especially Madison, just touched on it, just about like taking those opportunities, saying yes, being able to let people know what you're doing, but also in the learning and development space, we always talk about the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, right? Someone who can advocate for you, someone who can say your name in rooms when you're not there. But if people don't know what you do, if people don't know what your capacity is, if people don't know what your skill sets are, if people don't know what the thing is, when Melissa said, what is your unique skill set? What makes you you? If they don't know that, then they can't advocate for you. And so I think that, especially as women, we have to change our perception of really owning, highlighting, and standing on the things that we are really incredible at, seeing that maybe in a negative light with bragging, and really shift our perception to, it being a more positive thing of really showcasing what you're capable of doing. So that was my 2 cents. But Melissa and Madison, please feel free to chime in.
I love that. I think, it is very hard to overly self promote, but also I would say that you have the most knowledge about what you do. Others only see portions of it. So, you may be self promoting in a, small area, but not everyone is seeing everything you're doing. So I think always coming to the table and kind of reminding what you do if you have a chance. So, right, like there is a time and a place to self promote. It is when you're on that task force or cross functional work Madison talks about. It is at the end of a project or providing project updates. It is during your, yearly reviews. It is when you grab, coffee with someone and says, oh, you know what, you're struggling with this? Here, I have a solution or a thought starter. Don't assume that everyone sees everything you do and you're always self promoting. You all heard when I introduced myself, I said I was leader of the year. This is really exciting for me. I want to self promote that. I even have a placard in my office that celebrates that. But I did not get it tattooed across my forehead, although perhaps I could have. So, right, there's a time, there's a place, there's also scale and scope and magnitude to that. And I would say, as long as you're doing it at the appropriate times, I see no harm in self promotion because no one knows as much as you do about yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree, Melissa and Lena. I mean, no one can read your mind. So, I think we have to do some level of self promotion, right? And we have to get our work across to people. And I think as long as you have the work to showcase your skills, self promote as much as you can. I mean, if you have the evidence, right, of your accomplishments, let the world know. Take every opportunity to present on the work that you've done. Say yes to those the opportunities to share all the work that makes you you.
And in the spirit of sharing what you're amazing at, would you guys like to share maybe one thing that you're most proud of, or an accomplishment this past year that you're excited about?
So, I mean, I feel like everyone has maybe heard it by now, but in speaking and self-promoting and talking about our accomplishments, I will say I'm really proud of myself for being named Employee of the Year at Brother this year from our Board of Directors Awards. It's really meaningful, I think, not just because of the recognition itself, just because of it really reflects the work that I have been able to do within the brand protection space and building that kind of from the ground up. When I moved into this role, there wasn't a formal structure in place for brand protection in the US. And over the past year and a half, I've really been able to develop processes, building cross-functional relationships, driving some really awesome measurable results that ultimately help to protect the integrity of our brand. And we are only as strong as our brand. So I'm really proud of that, especially receiving the award from the board itself. Really affirms that the work that I'm doing is making a real impact on the business, and I'm proud of myself.
Um,
Melissa?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm most proud of in the work I do today is really being able to connect dots. So, within marketing operations, as I mentioned, we kind of are we provide governance, we provide, structure and ensure there's a value prop for everything marketing does. And I am so proud, and I'm not going to give a specific example here, but I'm so proud of the work that my team does because we are wrangling so many different areas. And the fact that we have such institutional, such tacit knowledge within my group and are able to, parlay those into action items, to be able to parlay that to make sure it's tied to strategy. The dot connecting that I am able to do every day impresses my younger self.
Thank you for sharing. We do have a couple more questions from the chat. So, the next question is, do you guys have any advice if you want to make the shift, but you feel unqualified for the role that you want?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of the most important thing to do here is to recognize what is about the new role that is interesting to you. Again, is it title? Is it the fact that it brings purpose? Is it that it allows autonomy? Whatever those reasons are, and then what are the skills that you can align to it? So I think most importantly, and we've mentioned this a few times, you're never going to be perfect on paper. I don't think that I've ever been perfect on paper for any role I've ever applied. Um, Casey in talent acquisition has told me many times some of his best hires have been ones that were a little out of the box. So I think to, in this particular example, take what the core tenets of the role are, what interests you, and then what skills do you have that are transferable to those particular things. When you write it out, it may become very clear that there is a skill gap here, and then create a plan how to close that skill gap. Or it may become very clear that 80% of the most important tenets of this job you meet. So I would almost just kind of do a little weighing out of what is the role, what do you have to offer, and what can you do to address the gaps that may exist.
Thanks, Melissa. And I would also add, statistically, we see that women don't traditionally apply for roles unless they have like, I think it's like at least 80 to like 90% of the experience there, where men will traditionally apply just apply for the role sometimes at a lower percentage. And so, give yourself a little credit and a little grace to say, hey, how can I grow in the role? How can I grow into the role? But of course, making sure that you are identifying those skill sets and working with a team. You're someone else in the chat, because this kind of goes into what they're saying, is how do managers and peers typically respond when someone expresses interest in moving teams? For us here at Brother, there's a support system here, from our learning and development team, to our HRBPs, our human resource department, to your current manager who should be looking at, every company may be different, but we have kind of like your independent plan or whatever your company uses. But you shouldn't feel like you're just going at it alone, right? Build a team around yourself to say, hey, I'm thinking about this internal move. What do I need? How do I get there? What support do I need? And then creating a plan to help yourself get there, so that you can feel more confident about the move. And so you can feel more secure about the move, regardless if you're, not hitting 100% of the experience that's on the paper. And I'll open it to Madison if she has anything else to add.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think communication is the most important thing here. I know I try to be an over communicator. I try to make sure my interests are known. If I want to make a career shift, I want to make sure that I kind of put that in the ears of the people around me, making sure that they're aware that this is my goal, this is what I'm going after. And so far at Brother, I've had really awesome support from my managers when I've decided that I want to make those career shifts. But I think it's really about sharing that information in a way that you want to develop these skills to take the leap into an area, and maybe an unknown area, but an area that you're interested in.
Thanks, Madison. And Melissa, you said something about your younger self. If you could go back to, I don't know, your younger self, what is some advice that you would give to your younger self?
Hmm. I would say taking calculated risks. So I am not a big risk taker. I value stability and consistency. So for me, I would say take some risks. It doesn't always have to be extremely stable or consistent for me to feel successful. But when I say calculated, it's by knowing myself, focusing on what matters. Am I taking a risk because I can learn? Am I taking a risk because it provides a new opportunity? Does new feel better than stable right now? Am I focusing on autonomy? Do I want a role that I am going to craft from the ground up, like Madison's been talking about her current role, or do I want a role that I'm going to fill for an incumbent and do it better or differently? So for me, I would say focusing on what matters to me would have been really helpful early in the career, and also I think this is what I said earlier, lean into my network. I've been able to cultivate friends and peers and people that are much more tenured and much less tenured than me. Leaning in with them and realizing we're kind of all in this together it would have been really helpful to know early on.
And what about you, Madison?
Yeah. So, if I could talk to my younger self, I think I would say, and I've said this before, is to say yes to the opportunities that scare you. The ones that make you kind of second guess yourself a little bit are often the ones that tend to push you to grow the most. You never have to feel 100% ready. I think just being willing to learn as you grow is really important. And as Melissa said, I would tell myself to start building those relationships early and across the organization. Focus not just on your inner circle, but outside, because I think some of the most valuable insights and opportunities often come from those cross-functional relationships. And stay curious and don't be afraid to ask for what you want, whether it's a new project, a mentorship opportunity, or something as big as a career shift. I think it's really important to speak up. As I said, no one can read your mind, and ultimately you are your own best advocate.
Lena, you asked us earlier, what is something we should brag about? What is something that, we should yell from the rooftops or shout from the rooftops of what we've done? And, I had a strong answer, but one of the things I'd like to add on is one of the things I am so proud of is that I have built and cultivated a really strong team, being able to retain quite a few of my employees, but also giving others a safe place to leave. So Madison's mentioning speak up. When she was on my team, we did know she had both skill sets that could be used elsewhere, but also desires to learn new skill sets. So her ability to, have these authentic and sometimes awkward and tough conversations allows me to feel as a really good leader. I gave her a safe place to leave based upon the foundation we had. So that is so extremely critical that, cultivating this network and being able to have tough, transparent conversations is able to kind of set us forward in our career.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the questions in the chat kind of lends to that side, which is we've been talking about all the great things about internal moves and the beauty in it and the excitement and the curiosity and overcoming. But as you said, those could be awkward conversations to have. And one of the questions in the chat is, what's something you wish you known before you made the move? And I when I think about that, I'm sure that you all may have experienced challenges maybe before the move, during the move, or after the move. Is there anything that you can share about the challenge and how you overcame it, or anything you wish you really knew before making the move?
Yeah, so I think I have two answers here, Lena. And what I would say is even though you may be an internal candidate, do not assume that the hiring manager knows you or knows your skills. You still have to go into this selling yourself and selling how your experience can suit this role. So I would say, knowing to treat this like a real interview is extremely critical. And I would say, on the other hand, also not making assumptions of this new role based upon your experience with that role. If I had to say today what supply chain does, I would answer about 10% of that. So to be able to kind of typecast that, stay curious. Madison's been saying, you've been saying, stay curious about this role versus assuming your experience with this role or with this department encapsulates everything that's going on.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And I think, I don't think that, I lost my train of thought. I really don't think that you need one to know everything, but you also don't need, you really shouldn't be making those assumptions, as Melissa said, because I know in my experience, I thought, okay, the brand protection role is going to be under the legal team. They're going to be looking for an attorney or a paralegal. I came up with that in my head, and that's what I told myself. I'm like, I'm not qualified for that. And it wasn't until I really started asking questions, being a bit more inquisitive about the role, that I realized that's not necessarily the case, and maybe I am the right fit for this. So I think that's definitely one thing I wish I had done differently, because I probably would have started in my process of changing roles if I had known that sooner. But yeah, I think just asking the right questions, being inquisitive, don't assume that you know everything about the role, as Melissa said.
Thank you. So we are just about coming up at the top of the hour. We may only have room for like one more question or statement. And one thing that I always like to add is there anything that you all would like to share or have that you haven't shared? Sometimes that you haven't shared with the group. Sometimes I know that as a panelist myself, I'm like, oh, I wish they would have asked me about this, or oh, I wish they would have asked me about that. So as I wrap up, when we talk about talent mobility, I think to gather and kind of bring everything in, the key things that I heard today was make sure that your skill sets align, making sure that you have readiness, that you've prepared, that you've connected with your manager, that you've connected maybe with the L&D department to find out how can you do some upskilling, that you've connected with your HR VP or your the person in talent acquisition to identify if the role really aligns with who you are and what you want to do. And so focusing on your skill set, but not doing so much that you count yourself out now, right? The second thing is mindset, having an open mindset, right? Not pigeonholing yourself into one space, but having that curiosity that we talked about. And last but not least, building your network and making sure that you have someone who can go on the journey with you, a mentor, a sponsor, or someone who can advocate for you. But making sure that you are shouting from the rooftops how amazing you are, the skill sets you have, and all that you can bring to the table. But as we close here with 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute each, I'll let you guys close out and maybe share any last nugget of advice.
Lena, I do want to take your last thing about shouting from the rooftops. I, really would advocate for showing, not just telling. So don't, as someone mentioned earlier, self-promotion, don't just brag about it, quantify it, show up consistently. If Madison and I, both were awarded our board of directors awards this year, and then, fall off the face of the earth tomorrow, that's not consistent. So being able to not only tell the story of what you're doing, what you're interested in, but also showing. That means, volunteering for, new task forces, new projects, new special little working groups. That also means bringing some of those skill sets that you're looking to, have in a new role into the work you're doing today. So the thing I would like to add that maybe I haven't mentioned yet was show, don't just tell.
That's awesome. Great advice. Yeah, just to kind of summarize everything from today, I think my biggest takeaway for everyone is to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. You are going to grow so much more when you take those calculated risks that scare you. I mean, just taking those on can build so much confidence and can push you enough to make those moves that maybe you wouldn't have if you hadn't taken those calculated risks. And secondly, get that hands-on experience. I mean, we can talk the talk all day long, but I think in order to make a name for yourself at your company, you really need to produce the work that is going to get you that reputation, and it's going to get your name known. Because I mean, you really need to ensure that people know you and know the work that you do. And I think that's kind of my biggest piece of advice coming out of today.
Well, thank you both so much, Melissa and Madison. It's been a pleasure to speak to you today. I hope that our audience took some great nuggets and not only taking it, but taking it back and being able to apply it to your life and to your career to continue to grow. As a reminder, this recording will be sent out to everyone. And I believe Fairy Godboss will also send out a quick 1-minute survey so that we can make sure that we are continuing to build and provide and improve on future events such as these. So from Brother USA, we're super excited to have this lunch hour with you, and we wish you all the best. And thank you guys so much. We hope we got to most of the questions that we could, but we're happy to connect. And hopefully we'll see you on a future Fairy God Boss event in the future.